Welcome to Womxn Things The Podcast, a show dedicated to women who want to connect with their bodies and optimize their health for a more holistic and balanced life. We are your hosts and women's health experts, Kara Moore and Kirsten Humphreys, and we will be taking you on a journey of education and empowerment.
Stay tuned each week while we break down all the hottest topics in women's health today, including food and nutrition, periods, gut and skin health, fertility, and everything in between. You can find us on Instagram at Womxn Things, that's woman, WOMXN, and subscribe on your preferred podcast platform to keep up to date with all the latest episode releases. We hope you enjoy the episode today, and thanks so much for tuning in.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Womxn Things The Podcast. Like always, we have a very exciting episode for you today. And it's all about breathwork and a little bit about Ayurvedic medicine. And we have a special guest lined up for you. We thought that this was important because it is becoming really more of a popular trend. So we just thought we'd sort of educate you a little bit, give you an example of a little breathwork routine that you can adopt into your daily life, which Mira, our guest, is going to go with you through later. And yeah, so why breathwork is becoming so popular lately is because it's shown to help increase energy levels, boost your immune system. It can help you increase some self-awareness and joy in your life, and also can help with sleep and help to reduce pain and also help to remove some toxins from the body. So let's just quickly introduce ourselves. My name is Kirsten. I'm a naturopathic nutritionist and women's health coach, and I help busy women struggling with PMS, hormonal imbalances, and stress manage their symptoms with nutrition, mindfulness, and healthy daily habits so they can live an amazing life. And my Instagram is at Kirsten Health, and my website is knhwellness.co.uk. And of course, I'm joined by the lovely Kara.
Hello, everyone. So I'm Kara. I'm a clinical nutritionist and natural fertility educator. I've dedicated my online practice to help those who are struggling with their PCOS take control of their symptoms and improve their fertility. So you can find me on Instagram as well at fempowered_health or on my website, fempoweredhealth.com. I have to say, Kirsten, I am really excited for today's episode. I am quite new to the breathwork practice, and I'm really excited to hear what Mira has to say.
So today we have Mira Manek on with us, who's a chef, entrepreneur, author, promoter of Ayurvedic practices, and founder of Chai by Mira. And we'll be discussing with you a little bit about Ayurvedic medicine and breathwork, and she will take us through a breathwork session towards the end of the episode. So welcome, Mira.
Hi, Kara and Kirsten.
Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Really excited to be here.
Yeah, so to start off the episode, did you want to explain a little bit to our listeners about your personal and professional journey and what has brought you to be who you are today?
Absolutely. I think I would completely link the two, personal and professional. And I think the journey right now that I've taken in wellness and food has been very much linked to what I've been through in life in the last 10 to 15 years. And when I say that, I mean that it all began, the seed of sort of writing a cookbook and thereafter writing a book on Ayurveda, the seed of that all began when I was embarking on a very long and grueling divorce. And I was living abroad, and I'd sort of lost a sense of self, but also lost a sense of my own nutrition. And even though I thought I was being healthy, in many senses, I was equating health to being skinny or finding my own thinness as much as I could, and yo-yo dieting and yo-yoing with my own weight, and actually suffering from IBS pretty much my whole life from when I was a teenager, which is irritable bowel syndrome. And even though I've sort of corrected it over the years and really become better with my own digestion, in a sense, different things aggravate it. And I was constantly aggravating it while I was traveling a lot. So I was living abroad, and suddenly dawned on me that actually I need to go back to London and learn the food that I'd grown up eating. And I want to write a cookbook on healthy Indian food and the food I grew up eating, which is Gujarati food, something that hasn't really been focused on because each region of India has a different type of cuisine, and they're so varied, and yet we define Indian food by one or two things. That's expanded over time, especially in the last 5-10 years, but still Gujarati food doesn't really come into the restaurant landscape much. And it's very simple, it's very flavorful, it's quite different to what you find in restaurants. And so I wanted to focus on simple home-cooked food, and that's how my first book came about. And thereafter, my second book on Ayurveda, sort of combining the whole journey, starting with when the rituals that I grew up practicing without knowing that they were rituals as such, things that my parents instilled in me, and also the way my grandfather and grandmother lived their lives and watching them live their lives, plus going to various Ayurvedic health resorts as I was traveling in India in my late teens and 20s. So yeah, that's basically my two books. And then I launched my chai brand, but we can speak more about that and as we go along, because that was a very long answer for what you'd asked.
No, it was a great answer. Thank you.
That sounds like such a nice, wholesome upbringing to be incorporating all of those like culturally rich foods and practices.
It is. It's very, I think when you look back on it and this is something I write in my second book, Prajna, which is that when you lose certain things and when you sort of don't wake up with the ragas in the background and, obviously being in London as well, which has a sense of reality as opposed to being in somewhere like Dubai, although I sort of flitted between Dubai, Uganda, and I went to India a lot. So I did have a very, very fun and exciting life, but I lost a sense of myself in that. And I think I missed, when I looked back on it, I think I missed those very things that I grew up with or realized their value because they were so normal to me. And then I was like, no, actually there's something very authentic and unique about the food that I grew up eating, or the very large joint family that I grew up in with my grandparents as part of my pretty much daily life. The values that were instilled in me, the fact that I still speak Gujarati because my grandparents were alive, otherwise there wouldn't be such a need, although I do speak it with my mother as well. And there are a lot of friends of mine who are Gujarati who haven't necessarily grown up speaking the language. So that's something that I guess I found normal and at times I didn't really like, but now I value so much. And so when you lose that, or you miss it, you haven't been in London for a while with your family and you haven't lived there, you realize that there's such value in these things and you get drawn to the very things that you grew up doing, eating, practicing.
For our listeners, because this might be a new topic for them, are you able to explain a little bit about those type of rituals and perhaps go into what Ayurvedic medicine is? Just a brief kind of general introduction.
Yeah, Ayurveda is a system from India, a medicine system, a system of medicine, wellness, healing. And it's a little bit like, I draw a lot of comparisons to Chinese medicine in my book because I think that they speak the same language and it's great to find the similarities because these things don't oppose, they sort of work together. And essentially, the one thing is that your body type is completely different to another person's body type and the constitution is different, which is where the doshas come in, which you may have heard of, the 3 doshas that we are comprised of. They're different in different balance in each of our bodies, and our characteristics, how our tastes are, what our body needs, is all to do with that balance. And how do we get back into that balance that we were born with? And that is natural to each of us. Secondly, that there are key principles that I think most people in the world back in the day lived by, but I think we've lost in the modern world a little bit. And those key principles are universal and timeless. So therefore, Ayurveda, the principles of Ayurveda are universal and timeless, and they apply today as much as they did when Ayurveda was born a few thousand years ago. And those are, for example, eating at specific times of day, trying to go according to the circadian rhythm, which is the rhythm of the sun. So trying to understand that your digestive fire, or what Ayurveda calls the Agni, is mimicking where the sun is. So if the sun is at its strongest at midday, that's when you want to eat your largest meal, because your Agni, or your digestive fire, is also at its strongest point. Trying to wake up early, or as early as possible to when the sun wakes up. Of course, that's not completely possible in every time of year, but trying to mimic that as much as you can is almost like winning at life. So going to sleep early when the sun goes to sleep or soon after will allow your bodily functions to take place the way they should, and the healing to happen, or the functions of the body to happen properly. There are certain things that happen between 10 p.m. and 1 a.m. that you want to make sure happen. So that's winning at life without trying. And also we do need to realize that we live in this modern context where it's not always possible to do certain things. And therefore, use the 80-20 rule. What do you do most of the time? And that's what counts. And that will make you understand and realize that the little changes that you make, how are they affecting you? And have those small changes allowed you to have those small changes made a difference in your life? So for example, if you've shifted your time of eating and time of sleeping by half an hour or an hour, have you noticed what's happened during that week and how you feel, how different you feel by waking up that half an hour early? And make small changes. Start with very small changes. And that's what this book is about. I've written about various rituals. You know, the book has so many different rituals, from physical to mental to yoga to movement, and taking small things and applying new things, but making small changes so that you keep to them, rather than trying to infuse your life with like 10 changes at a time, or even 3 changes at a time, and then being too overwhelmed and not being able to keep up with any of them. So going back to the principles of Ayurveda, one of the other principles is having cooked foods rather than raw foods, which is again very important for digestion. So the idea here with everything that I'm talking about is that for Ayurveda, digestion is key. And actually, now that we are seeing this kind of so much going on in social media and the media about gut health, people are going on about gut health, you know, leaky gut syndrome, IBS, all these issues. They're very, very, very common now. And that's because we've disturbed that gut by eating more processed foods or less wholesome foods, or the timing isn't quite right, or we're eating out too much. And all these things will imbalance the gut microbiome. And therefore it's important to focus on digestion, because they say 80% of diseases or something like that, a large percentage of diseases and illnesses are linked to what's happening in the gut, and that's the root cause. So understanding that we need to fix the root cause rather than trying to alleviate or trying to put a plaster on the word escapes me. So trying to figure out the root cause rather than trying to fix the symptom.
It's like the analogy where you're trying to mop up a water from a leaking tap, like you want to fix the tap, right? Instead of just constantly mopping up the water. Yeah. So
exactly. Exactly. And you've got to, and I think it's that understanding that it's a wholesome, holistic spectrum of well-being, and it's not just one thing that will fix it. So yes, maybe it's the food, the nutritious food that you're eating or not eating, but potentially if you're not sleeping well and you're in a stressed state most of the time, you won't be absorbing even the nutrients from the good food that you're eating. So firstly, you need to focus on stress and sleep, and then the food comes into play, because actually you can't even absorb the food if you are not resting properly and if you're in a stressed state, because even according to science, the hormones that are at play are cortisol and adrenaline. And when those are at play, you can't be releasing the more relaxing hormones or the hormones that are needed to digest the food. So your focus is going on stress rather than on rest and relax. So how do we then get into that relaxed state? And that's where things like breathwork come in, because that's the quickest way to get us into the parasympathetic nervous system. But yeah, those are the key principles of Ayurveda. And Ayurveda is, again, it's from India, but it's very universal, as I said. And I'll just read you a quick introduction on Ayurveda from my book. Ayurveda, at the heart of Ayurveda is balance and living in tune with nature. When you eat, such as having your largest meal at lunchtime when the sun is at its strongest, is just as important as what you eat and how much you eat. Movement and yoga go hand in hand with food, and keeping the mind at ease and not allowing for stress is an essential part of the package. Thus, it is a lifestyle comprising of and connecting the elements of mind, body, and spirit, a lifestyle that is wholesome, pure, and nourishing, eating foods that are light, fueled with energy and prana, for it's said in this ancient scripture, the Upanishads, that food is Brahman, the higher consciousness, the true self, the divine. So there's a lot of practices in Ayurveda. You were asking me what practices I grew up with. There are a lot of practices, and those are more sort of functional things such as, and there's a reason for each and every one of them. So food is obviously very important, how you use your spices, how you cook your food. But at the same time, there's things like tongue scraping or oil pulling or massaging the body, abhyanga, self-massage, and all these things play vital role in the holistic, wholesome element of Ayurveda.
Yeah, I really love as well that sort of science is kind of tying in and really discovering that these more traditional and older forms of medicine do actually have a lot of, principles that we've now proved to be true and necessary for our health and survival. So I was thinking that as you said this, like, even as nutrition practitioners, like 6 years ago, let's say, if you told everyone gut health was like the root of everything, they'd be like, oh, you're crazy, you know? And now it's like, actually, we know that it is because they're proving it in science. So it's kind of catching up with Ayurveda and all these other traditional forms of medicine that have been kind of saying this for a lot of years. So it's really nice to see that now.
Exactly. I think it's really important to understand, to see, and wonderful to see that science is starting to prove these things, and neuroscience.
Yeah, I'm so interested in the topic of neuroscience. I've been reading so much this summer about it, but that's another topic for another day.
Yeah.
I just want to quickly bring up, just because you've mentioned your books and stuff a few times, do you want to tell us the names of your books and sort of like where people can find them and stuff? Because I have read your books and I love them. So
thank you so much.
Share it with the rest of the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. No, and I love that these books can be quite timeless, because Saffron Soul, for example, is a book which is my first book. It's a cookbook comprising of the recipes that I grew up eating and that we still cook every single week at home, that my mum still cooks, my aunt still cooks, my grandmother still cooks, and it's very much staple recipes that you can very easily make without too many different ingredients. So you're really bringing Indian food to its simplest and most basic, and yet it's so flavorful if you cook it the right way. And it is quite simple, you know, and that's what I try to show, that, you know, you don't need to try and replicate the amazing flavors that you get at restaurants, because they're doused in a lot more spices and a lot more ingredients, maybe extra oil and butter that you probably don't need. Yet at home, you can make equally flavorful and simple food that doesn't need to replicate, and yet it's kind of home cooked, you know, and you're also using spices, and spices, using it in any way, you know, even in your non-Indian cooking, is beneficial to the gut and has so many other nutritional benefits. So I'd say that Saffron Soul is a very soulful recipe cookbook, with every single recipe has been photographed, which is really nice because it makes for a nice coffee table book as well then. But it also has some of my more modern take on food, like taking inspiration from Indian food and creating my own dishes. Second book, which is Prajna, Ayurvedic Rituals for Happiness, is very much about Ayurvedic rituals and Ayurveda, but it also goes through sort of spirituality, India, the spiritual landscape in India, delves into my own journey, which got me here, which allowed me to, or made me write the book. And it delves into the journey of healing from any difficulty you've been through, and how to find the package of rituals that you need and the toolbox that you want to create to ensure that you can come back from a setback in life and bring to life with a little bit more oomph. In terms of where to find them, they're both on Amazon and on my Chai website. You can get signed copies at chaibymira.com.
We'll put that in the notes on the website, or on the episode description as well. Thank you. I was just going to say, shall we get into the topic of breathwork?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that ties in quite neatly, because we're talking about the stress system of Ayurveda and how it's, well, of any system really, of how we need to ensure that we are not stressed when we eat. And that's one of the main things, I think, you know, eating, for example, it affects our digestion. But stress in itself can do so many different things. You just don't know what the symptom might be. So you might be trying to address psoriasis or hair fall or a leaky gut. But all those things will probably link back to stress. And therefore, trying to use tools like breathwork, it could be anything, but I feel like breathwork is the quickest way for our physiology to change our psychology. So if right now, you know, wherever you are, take a very, very deep breath and just close your eyes for a moment and just really take a deep breath and elongate that breath, and you'll literally feel a release. You'll feel like a big and you'll feel like, you know, that even if you thought you weren't stressed, you'll feel a release of some sort of stress. So just do that wherever you are. Just take a really deep breath and elongate it for a few extra seconds. And by taking that one deep breath, you're almost landing yourself in the present, but you're also, if you do this, say, for example, before every meal, a few deep breaths, you'll be able to arrive in that present moment and register what you're eating, and also digest it better, because you won't hopefully be in that stressed state that you were 10 minutes ago. And that stress could be anything. It could be frazzlement from arriving from work a little bit late, or just trying to rush somewhere. It could be, you know, walking into the house and being bombarded by 10 things or people. It could be just, relationship stress. It could be traffic stress. It could be the fact that you went to the gym and your body's stressed out from just being at the gym. It could be anything. But realizing and understanding that our body could be in a stress state and taking that moment or a few moments to just say, no, I'm okay, taking that deep breath, that will make a massive difference to how you digest your food, how you chew your food, whether you're registering what you're eating, and it affects your choices and everything. So actually that's where breath work comes in, I think. And obviously I'm talking about just taking a few deep breaths, and deep breaths are great, but there's so much more to breath work. When I've done Kundalini yoga, which is something that I started doing a few years ago and I absolutely fell in love with, I realized how breath work can take me to such altered states of the mind. So, for example, sometimes I'd feel really relaxed and walk out feeling completely drowsy. And sometimes I'd walk out feeling super elevated and almost like ecstatic, like almost like drug frenzy, that sort of elevated sense of the mind. And it is amazing how Kundalini yoga or even just deep breath work can take you to these different states of mind. So when it comes to stress, the reason why deep breathing is really important is because it activates the vagus nerve, which is the biggest nerve that runs through our body, which connects all the body's organs. And when the vagus nerve is stimulated, it sends signals of calmness to the body, and the heart rate slows down. It also becomes regular, blood pressure decreases, and the muscles relax. So the vagus nerve sends signals to the brain of these changes in the body organs, and the brain, therefore, as a result, becomes calm. So that's how scientifically, and that's where we were talking about neuroscience, and that's where neuroscience comes in, because it's starting to prove how these things like breath work can actually help to release calmness in the body. It's not just, oh yeah, take a breath and you'll feel this. It's actually being proven by science, which is really fantastic. And in terms of the types of breathwork, there are so many, but the basic ones, which is pranayama, which is what yoga starts with, the deep breathwork, and actually the breathwork they use throughout yoga is, I guess, comprised of I use a few different types of breath, and I try to do them regularly. And they're the sort of breaths that you want to kind of bring into your daily life in the morning. You can even do some of it at night. And they activate your digestive system. They make you feel calm. They allow you to become energetic, one of the morning breaths. And they also help you tighten your core as well. So they're great breaths to take into your daily life. So yeah, that's the sort of landscape of breath work in terms of what I was talking about.
So many really good positive impacts that breath work can have. And it's something that was quite simple and something that's free. Like everybody can, utilize their breath to improve their health. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing all that information with us. Kirsten and I did have a request. We were wondering if you could quickly run us and our listeners through a quick breathing exercise so we can have the chance to experience, what breathwork is like, how to do a breathwork exercise. And if you're new to this could be a great introduction.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are such brilliant breaths, such as Kapalbhati, which is the breath of fire, which is forceful exhalation, not focusing on the inhale, which really, really helps the digestive system wake up in the morning. And also it's very energetic breath. And there's the AnulomVilom, which is the alternate nostril breathing. But today, because it's quite hard to explain the others, I'm just going to say, try and do a long inhale and exhale and focus on doing the exhale longer. So maybe 2 or 3 seconds longer in the exhale, because that again is a really calming breath, and it also increases vagus nerve activity, slows down the heart rate, and calms us down fully. So just taking really deep breaths. Now, if you want to start with 5 seconds in, 7 seconds out, and then increase that, do that. Work at your own pace. You can probably hear me breathing. I'll do it quite audibly. You don't have to do it audibly. I quite like doing it audibly. That's sort of called the Ujjayi breath or the victory breath in yoga. But you don't have to do it audibly, and you can just really slow the breath down and almost like sipping the breath. So let's start now. Take another one. And out. And now just go at your own pace. That might have been too long for you. It was sort of 7 seconds in, 9 seconds out. But go at 5 and 7 if you want, or even longer. And just feel the effect on the body, on the mind. Bring about the awareness of where you feel it. And think about what you were thinking before and what you're thinking now. Do you sense the thoughts sort of settling in your mind the way dust settles? And if that happens, then imagine the impact of doing this continuously for a few minutes every day. And just feel that sense of relaxation in the body. And if your heart's still racing or if you're thinking about something, don't try and calm it down. It will happen. Just keep at the breath. Over time, that will happen. Don't force it, because I think forcing these things will often further aggravate it. So just keep a few more breaths. 5 in, 7 out, 7 in, 9 out. Just focusing on a slightly longer exhale. And just relax into the body. And see if there's any tightness anywhere. Are your eyes clenched? Are your fists clenched? Are your eyebrows sort of frowning at all? Do you feel like your jaw isn't relaxed? Just soften everything while you do this. And feel the softness. Just almost go from top to toe. And soften each part of yourself. And you'll notice how quickly, if you scan your body and use this breath, how quickly you can settle into the present moment, into the more rest and relax mode, how quickly you can shake off that stress. But just don't be hard on yourself, and don't think that if you can't get to that state immediately, there's something wrong, because it's very normal to take time to adjust to this, and just know that if you keep practicing this, even if it's just a few minutes at a time, that you will get there. And come out of it and just feel and sense what has happened, and try and stick to this for a few days if you can, and just write down the changes that have happened. And if you're interested in doing more pranayama, breathwork, just look it up. You'll find it on YouTube or on my Instagram. There's various breathworks. And you'll be able to just focus on doing different types of breath that will do different things to you, such as alternate nostril breathing, which will completely balance both sides of the brain, the masculine and feminine energies within us, the yin and the yang. And then the Kapalbhati, which will fire up the digestion, fire up the belly, make you feel energized first thing in the morning. And there's other ones, Sitali breath, which cools down the mind and cools down the body, both physically and mentally. And that's that. I hope that gave you a bit of a taster of sort of what even the most basic breathwork can do.
It is literally free medicine, right? It's just so good. I read it in a book once years ago, and I was like, oh, it's so true. You just said the best thing that you can do for yourself. You don't need a retreat. You don't need to go on holiday. You just need to breathe deeply, like a few times a day.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just, just take those moments. It's hard to stop when you're going at a fast pace and you're rushing around, but stopping and pausing, because you're almost scared of stopping. You're almost scared of listening to your thoughts, especially if you're going through a hard time or something. You're almost scared of giving yourself that moment, that pause. But it's quite important, because that's where the change happens. That's where the healing happens. That's where the magic happens, I guess. And that's where the listening happens. That's where you start finding your inner voice and being more intuitive.
I'm conscious that we're a little bit short on time here. So I just thought, to wrap us up, did you have any other Ayurvedic tips for wellness that you can share with our listeners that they can take home today?
Well, all in all, it was the principles of Ayurveda, which I said about food. And then there are practices. So, for example, the tongue scraping, the oil pulling, all those things are to get rid of toxins in the body. So it's really important, while we nourish ourselves properly and we're not in a deeply stressed state all the time, it's also important to detox our bodies. And one of the ways, there are many ways, and one of the things that I grew up doing that I didn't even realize was an Ayurvedic thing is tongue scraping. So first thing in the morning after brushing teeth, scraping the tongue with a copper tongue scraper, which is something that you almost can't live without once you start doing. And that releases or gets rid of some of the buildup of armor or toxins in the body that is built up during the night. Similarly with oil pulling, something that I don't do much, but actually is a really great practice. So if you take little practices at a time, and again, when it comes to breath work, I was talking about the Kapalbhati, or the breath of fire, and that's one breath that actually, again, releases the armor or toxins that you build up in the body. So there's various ways of releasing toxins, as much as there are ways and rules to live by when it comes to food.
Thank you, Mira. We'll definitely pop some of those suggestions, and we might spell out some of the words that you've suggested, the breathing techniques, so people are able to find them on YouTube.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. Wonderful podcast, and good luck with it all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
If you'd like to check out some of the books or products we discussed today, you can find Mira on her website at chaibymira.com or at miramanek.com, or on Instagram at Mira Manek. Thank you for listening to our show today. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure that you subscribe, let us know what you thought in the comments, and share it with all the important women in your life. There are plenty more of these episodes to come, so please visit our website to stay in the know. You will find us at womxnthings.com. That's WOMXN. Much love, Kirsten and Kara.
The information contained in this podcast is not intended to treat, diagnose, or replace the advice of your healthcare practitioner. Always consult with a qualified health professional if you have a pre-existing health condition or are currently taking any medications before making any changes to your diet or lifestyle.